It looks like Naomi may have given us the biggest clue that she is not returning to WWE. Nothing is yet confirmed, but as we are going to do as normal, talk through what we have. Stay tuned. This is WrestlXtra.
Yo, this is WrstlXtra. I'm your boy A-Dazzle, the Black Wrestling Advocate. Of course, joined by my trios team, Mex, the WrestleManiac, and of course, the Professor himself, Gerard Bonner. As you heard the emotion in Mex's intro.
Wasn't that some kind of emotional? My Lord.
But you know what? Before we go there, let's catch our breath a little. Let's hold our emotions just for a little while and let's go to Vengeance Day first. Let's get that part out the way. Vengeance Day, NXT, back on the road, which was amazing. Guys, how did you find the show? How was the feel? Gerard, how did you feel NXT back on the road? They were in Charlotte, North Carolina. How was the show for you?
I was nervous coming into this because it was their first show outside of the Performance Center in a couple of years. And the one thing I wondered was, would the card be one that would excite people to fill an arena? And so when I saw that opening crowd shot, I was like, oh my God, they showed up and they showed up big. And then that first match happened. And I went, oh, this is how we're cooking. Oh, the spirit of takeover is hovering over us even now. Yeah. I was just like, I said, yes, I am all the way here for it. And it felt like the classic takeovers from start to finish. Every match mattered. Everything that happened on there mattered and had significance. We had surprises. We had title changes. We had 5-star matches. This is the NXT that we know and love. And I'll tell you what, this made me very, very happy.
For sure. Mex, as Gerard said, we saw great matches. We saw a few title changes. What was probably some of the best parts for you from Vengeance Day?
Wesley and Dijakovic belonged in 2019 NXT takeover. Like, that as an opening bout as well, to get everyone hype and ready for it. Like, that was really the one that made me think, like, man, I miss Black and Gold, man.
For real.
That was absolutely brilliant. And it's good to see, you know, I can't really say I'm so much invested in this current iteration of Dijak and whatever his character is, some law enforcement underlord or I don't know.
Terminator from Sin City.
Literally, but you know, he's just so good in the ring, and obviously copped an injury for his troubles, which I'm sure we've all seen online, which is a nasty one. But Wesley, you know, this is where this boy was made for, the bright lights, and it now shows. I feel like everything he's been asked to do in NXT, he's ascended through obviously the tag team ranks, got to the North American title and everything, and he's looked like okay doing it. Although we know there's a lot more in there. And I felt like on Sunday night, we saw a lot more we've been waiting for. And I'm almost thinking now, okay, graduate this guy. He's past this now. So, that it was phenomenal. Then, of course, we saw Apollo and we saw Carmelo Hayes. And Carmelo Hayes, another stellar outing. I was in tears laughing, no word of a lie. To beat someone 2-0 in a best out of 3 series, it's one of these things that just don't really happen in wrestling. One person gets 1-4, another gets the other 4, and then it's the decider. 2-0 is emphatic. That is, I'm sorry, I'm the guy, move on. We obviously saw at the end of the show, you know, what he could possibly be moving on to, which is what we've been wanting. That Kato has resurfaced, which... You know, NXT, I think, is where he does need to kind of cut his teeth for a bit. So I think it's a good move. It was a really good show, and I feel like these guys in general, black or white, ethnic, Spanish, they needed this point of almost elevating from what they've been doing in the performance center, and it's this kind of intermediate step before the main roster, so they don't struggle under the bright lights of the main roster and the scrutiny that comes with. I think all round it was just a really good show, and NXT kind of getting back to its glory days.
And I think for me, this is where the transition, or this is where going back on the road for the pay-per-views helps in a major way, because everyone's been doing their stuff in the school gym for way too long now, and it doesn't feel as though they're progressing necessarily. Whereas, you know, they showed an image of some of the performance center guys that weren't there, sitting there watching what's going on. And someone, I think it was Vic Joseph, who made the comment of, you know, they're watching, you know, what it's like to become one of the big stars in NXT. That made me feel as though, right, we're at the Performance Center for a reason. We'll be on the weekly show, but until we get to the pay-per-view, it doesn't mean anything yet. It tells us something. So that's the perfect way for it to be. Going back to the matches, what happened? Wesley, just as Mick said, this is where he needs to be. Let's have a run of Wesley doing his thing, whether it's defending, whether he loses and chases again. Let's just have him around this sphere of the the North American Championship.
You know what? Before you corrected yourself, I was happy for you to go ahead with it. Like, yes, it makes sense to me. Like,
it is.
It is what it is. It is what it is. But you know, and then obviously now we've got Carmelo Hayes and Apollo Crews. The 2-0 is Shawn Michaels once again saying, "This is my guy."
Absolutely.
This is my guy. And I'm hoping what we end up having is Carmelo Hayes winning the NXT Championship at Stand and Deliver.
Yeah.
There's no other way for this whole thing to go. I don't even want him to be on the main roster anytime soon. I need him to be NXT champion, have a good run. Then we'll think about that stuff and whatever else. Yes, he's ready for it. But at the same time, again, Vic Joseph's just on point on Sunday night, because I think it was either him or Booker T that said, actually, no, it was Booker T that said it, that they want to see him on a good run for the next 2 years or so, and then make the move to the main roster. And I'm right there with him. I don't know if 2 years might be too long, but at least still some kind of good run with the NXT Championship, because let's be real, both times, Bron Breakker, Grayson Waller doesn't excite me in the slightest. They tried their best to build it up, and they kind of did well with what they had, but that's not NXT Championship matchup material.
I'm not gonna lie though, I thought they were gonna put the title on Waller.
I thought so too. I thought so too.
Gonna do it.
Really?
Yeah.
Especially with the cage match, and he can't escape now. He has to fight Braun. And I thought they would do it.
True. Yeah, I think there are enough elements of Grayson Waller that it would make sense for him to be the NXT champion. And, it'd be kind of that move that says, hey, we're on the road now, and this is the guy who can carry it. At the same time, I think the only reason Bron Breakker retained was so that he can be beat by Carmelo Hayes. I felt like a Carmelo beating Grayson Waller won't hit the same to become NXT champion as hitting Bron Breakker, who's now almost held this title for a year. Right.
Exactly that. So these are the great things we've got coming out of Vengeance Day. I'm actually quite excited to see what happens in NXT at the moment. Oh, we've also got new women's tag team champions.
Yes, and men's tag team champions.
And men's tag team champions as well, which is nice. Nice to see Kiana James getting a big title. Even at the expense of Kaden Carter's record run with what is it now? Katana Chance.
Katana Chance. Yeah,
I was going to go back to Catanzaro. But it was actually a really, really good show. It was a very black show as well. It was a really good show. It was good. Moving on to the emotional news that Gerard predicted not too long ago. I mean, this whole thing now with Naomi. For those that don't know, the big giveaway or the big clue that we have that she may not be returning is recently on her social media, I believe it's Twitter specifically.
And Instagram.
And Instagram. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
it's happening.
Yeah.
She's changed some of her bio and it says just Trinity. Trinity, of course, being her real name. Just Trinity, no Naomi, no mention of WWE, nothing at all. We've had no confirmation from either her or the WWE about her status with the company, but it looks almost certain. Gerard, I'm gonna go to you. You give me kind of like your synopsis as to like all the little things that you saw that made you think, right, this just isn't happening.
Yeah, I think there were a couple of clues. I think one, obviously, that whole run that her and Mercedes had when they were doing Comic-Cons, walking the runway, all of those things. I really think it was a moment for them to say, hey, we're going to bet on us and we're going to see what value our names have. And I think in that whole process, both Mercedes and Trinity figured out, wait, our names are worth much more than we thought they were. And this is just an assumption, and maybe it's unfair to say. It seems as though Mercedes probably realized that more than Trinity did going into this. Yeah. But I think now being in it, Trinity has realized, wait a minute, I can walk those red carpets. I can take these bomb pictures. I can do all of this stuff, and I don't have to put my body on the line to do it. And if I'm not, and this to me is the kicker, they left for a reason. The reason was we don't see tag teams elevated and we don't see who we are being elevated. So if they're going to come back, they both have to be put in a position where they can be elevated. And to me, it's clear that that wasn't the plan. If so, she would have been number 30 and not Nia Jax. But when we saw Nia come in at number 30, I think we all went, uh-oh, because we missed the moment there at Survivor Series. To me, having her and Mercedes come in to be the two people to be a part of War Games in Boston just made sense. When that couldn't happen, we knew Mercedes was out the door because of January 1st. But then all of this going on with Trinity, we held out our last bit of hope. To me, I said after the Rumble, if she doesn't show up, it's a wrap, folks. And so I don't want to burst anybody else's bubble because I see some people talking about, oh, she's going to head to AEW. No, she is not. Please understand, AEW and WWE have two very different models. They have two different ways of operating. And she's not an AEW person. She is a WWE person through and through. People forget she was successful before she got to WWE as a dancer, and all those types of things. Now she's realizing I can be just Trinity. So I hope and pray we enjoyed her run. I'm excited to see what the next chapter for Trinity looks like, because as of now, it looks like it's not a part of WWE. And I don't expect a statement from WWE, just like we didn't get one from them when it came to Mercedes.
Very, very true. Mex, without getting emotional, give us your thoughts on the whole scenario, how you see it.
Yeah, man. I think Gerard's more or less hit it. It's the same kind of beats. Like you look at each pay-per-view, and as fans, we do the thing where we're kind of in our heads predicting, okay, yeah, it should be a good fit to come back here, or a good fit to come back here. And all of those places we've earmarked have passed. So I mean, it's very unlikely they're gonna give Bailey doesn't have something to do at WrestleMania, and they're gonna roll out the red carpet like they did for Cody, like they did for Seth, and all of a sudden Naomi walks out at WrestleMania. It's highly unlikely, but not impossible. Like it looks like she's moving on. Yeah, she looked like she's moving on. She's seen her mate in Sasha Banks and Mercedes Moné do it, and it's almost like it's time to bet on ourselves. And it's not the worst gamble in the world. After all, her husband is still there. Her husband, has got that certified check, if you like. So, if these it's a good opportunity to attempt these other ventures. If and we touch wood and hope everything works out for her. If it doesn't, she will always have a home in the WWE. If not for her husband. So, yeah. You give people a try in it. You give people an opportunity to book things well on TV and this, that, and the other. And I've always said, you know, with her being in the WWE for what 10 odd years or so, even the fact she's what a 2 times women's champion, she was never a Divas champion in that era. Like, give me a break. Like, it's an absolute crime, which up till today I still don't understand. So yeah, I think even more so her, I would be, you know, kind of peeved with how how I've been booked if I'm Naomi. And yeah, it's not to go and try AEW because, like you're saying, Gerard, she's not of AEW's ilk. That's not, you know, a slight on her or a slight on AEW. It's just not a match. Like, it isn't. She might as well go off and do show business and other ventures and stuff. More so, if she wants to wrestle again, return to WWE. I don't see anywhere else. Anywhere else being her home in that respect. So yeah, I mean, I guess we all want a bit more confirmation in terms of what her next move is to know that, you know, this is a nail in the coffin. But we saw Miss Monet's changes on her social media, and it looks like this one has pretty much followed suit. So yeah,
I you know, it's crazy because also as well, like in recent weeks, of course, we saw Mandy Rose. You know, she was kicked out of NXT, but at the same time, you know, with the interview that she did, she was talking about making more money than she does in wrestling and whatever else. Not that I'm expecting any OnlyFans from Naomi. Unsubscribe, but I don't think it's gonna happen. It's not gonna happen, so I don't need to figure it out. But at the same time, you know, there are clear opportunities for these ladies to be making more money without, as Gerard said, putting their body on the line, without having to travel as much or as strenuous, I guess, as the WWE is, as we know already. You know, there are chances for them to do their own thing. You know, we've seen a few others that have left and they're still successful. Yeah, we might not hear their name every 2 seconds, but Lord knows, they know that they are very, very happy, very successful, doing what they're doing, kind of almost commanding the way their own lives go, as opposed to being, you know, it being, you know, dictated by the machine that is WWE. So, you know, there's no real big surprise. I guess when Mercedes and Trinity first left the WWE, the big question went on, you know, we all knew Mercedes has this chance to go do this, that, and the next, and we were always questioning what Trinity is going to do, and she'll end up coming back because there's probably not that much for her to do. But you know what? We were wrong. We were wrong. It's as simple as that. She's found something. She's found her way, and she's doing it. It's as simple as that. She's happy doing it. It's as simple as that. Next, go on.
I think what people need to remember is, like, obviously Mercedes got picked up to maybe do bigger things.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean that Naomi is not a commodity in herself.
Right.
In as disappointed as we may all be with how she has been booked throughout her career, maybe this is someone that's been on TV consistently for 10 years. You can't tell me this person doesn't have value. Like, she is, for anyone that's a wrestling fan or loosely connected through Total Divas or whatever, she's a household name.
Yes.
And that's you know, and that could be a pool of you know, let's say, I don't know how many followers WWE has, but let's say 10 million people, 20 million people. Like, and even if 5 of those 20 million people have another interest in fashion, that's a crowd that's going to go over here, and you know, that's how business works. So yeah, it may not be as big as her counterpart, but there is still going to be a lot out there and options for her. Will Chisholm says here in the chat, but we know Tony would try to sign her just to be petty. I mean, they might put out the odd rumors of AEW are interested. We don't know what her plans are. I don't think they're in wrestling outside of WWE personally.
I don't see it happening. You know, we've talked about it numerous times here. We've thought about Impact. We've talked about the possibilities of AEW, what that might look like, and none of them really work. You know what I mean? None of them really make sense. And it's not to say that she can't. It's not that to say she definitely wouldn't. But at the same time, you know, there's just this thing that we know, that there are certain people that fit WWE and don't really fit anywhere else.
Yeah,
right.
It's just the way. And at the end of the day, she's been brought up through WWE. She wasn't on the Indies before that, and all the rest of it. So she has a certain way of doing things, and that's the WWE way.
Right.
And that's not a bad thing. That's just how it is. And she
Mm-hmm.
did it very well. She's 2-time SmackDown Women's Champion. And you know, it's as simple as that. I can't really fathom in a very realistic way her being anywhere else. And AEW just doesn't hit it for me. And again, we've said it so many times with the way that the women's division is being dealt with at the moment. And of course, we talked, you know, a lot about Jade Cargill as well, and how she's being used or not being used, and all the rest of it. Those two are friends; they know each other.
Yes.
There possibly may have been some kind of conversation, or just the simple fact that Trinity's been watching how things have gone with her, and probably thinking, if she's supposed to be their biggest star or one of their biggest stars, and I'm going to come in, how am I going to come in, one, as a bigger star than her,
right,
or even to a point where I'm going to feel as though I'm wanted here? I don't really see that happening personally. So, and I think she would probably see it the same way. So it's just, let me do what I'm doing, where I'm appreciated, where I'm happy. Let's just leave it there. And I'll watch my husband do his thing on SmackDown every Friday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I think what people don't seem to understand these days, and this is true right now in almost every genre of life, is that people aren't lifers anymore. And what I mean by that is, you know, there was a time where if you were a wrestler, you know, you were going to be a wrestler for the rest of your life, which is why Ric Flair can't stay away from the business and he keeps having final matches. But today's wrestler says, hey, I'm going to do this for X number of years, and then I'm going to ride off into the sunset and do something else, whatever their something else is. And she's part of that generation. And for her, she's actually looked at, I'm sure, the model that was created by The Rock and several others, which says this isn't the ceiling, maybe it's the floor, you know? Maybe it is the place that gives me the foundation to be able to do all of the other things that I want to do. You know, I mean, think about it. This week we saw Adele, one of the biggest music stars in the world, say, hey, the one person I've never met that I always wanted to meet is The Rock. And he shows up, you know, and you got Jay-Z and all these people going crazy about The Rock at the Grammys. Yeah, right. So, like, if that's the kind of future that is available to people, granted, there's only one Rock, but Batista's carved his own way. John Cena's carved his own way. You know, it's time for a woman to come from that space and be able to carve her own way. Though Trish Stratus is having great success and several others, there is a template for this. And so I think, you know, she's able to say, because there's a template, let me figure out how to make this money.
Yeah. And you know, you mentioned the bigger stars in The Rock, John Cena, Batista, but you've still got others who have been in the WWE and have gone away and still been successful. Lana, CJ Perry, you know, she's doing her film stuff, and you know, she seems to be happy. I can't see her coming back to wrestling anytime soon. You know, and there are others who have done that, those who have been on the indies and then gone to modeling or fashion or films, or you know, just other stuff completely outside of any type of show business that have done really well. So, you know, I think it is this notion of people not necessarily being lifers. And I think for me with Naomi, she probably realized this probably a little later on. It's not to say, I think she comes from being a dancer, a cheerleader and stuff like that, and had maybe had that in the back of her mind all this time. But I think most very recently, it's kind of been more of a confidence thing to say, right, I can actually do this on my own and do what I want to do. So I think that's just where she is, and I know she's running with it, which is perfect. It's perfect.
Yeah.
My mom always used to say to me this saying, you can't stand in one place and watch the carnival. You have to keep moving a bit.
I like that.
Stand in one place. The carnival will come and it'll go past you, and then what? You're still standing there, innit? So this is a whole thing of like evolving. and doing, again, like we're saying, the next part of her career, especially because, just as we're all kind of talking, I'm just trying to think, apart from Stephanie McMahon, and obviously the female legends, divas that always return at these select spots, what is the progression for a woman in wrestling when she cannot wrestle anymore, or she doesn't want to wrestle anymore? Apart from one-off spots and coming in and things of that nature, there isn't a lot of evidence for women progressing upstairs within wrestling. There just isn't right now. So, you know, she has to start looking at the next, not to say she's old or anything, but she's probably on the other end for how they book women. I think she's about 35 or so. I think she just turned
she's 35
last year. So yeah, so for men, this is like the peak. You're now like the peak of your career, like getting towards 40. Like this is when the championships and everything start coming. You've got the experience. For women, traditionally, this is more or less like when you start wrapping things up. You see what I mean? Like they tend to start women a lot earlier, and yeah, you rarely see women kind of going deep into their 40s or anything in wrestling. So this is also a woman, you know, not to talk on personal matters, but I know she has the children through Jimmy Uso. She may want her own family. She may want her own kids.
Very true.
Like
very true.
So. Like, yeah, there's other parts of her life, you know, it's time to explore. There's actually no better time than now to explore these other avenues and other paths of her life. So more power to her.
Mex, you said something. Mex said something really powerful though that I want us to just remember, and that is, it is unfortunate that there are no other career paths in pro wrestling that have been earmarked for women once they're done in the ring. I mean, not even just, you know, will you get to work in the front office, but commentary and all of these other types of spots that you should have that other men have the opportunity to go to. Women don't have that. So, you know, it is a much different kind of conversation. And so, yeah, I think you guys nailed it.
For sure. Moving on a little bit. Now, it is the month of February. In the US, it is Black History Month. You know, I'm trying to.
Yes.
You know, so we celebrate here, you know, BWA, Black Wrestling Alliance, we celebrate the icons of Black wrestling, their achievements and all the things, all the groundbreaking moments and stuff that they have done. Gerard, I'm going to go to you. You've got a little thing for us to kind of kick us off February with this Black History wrestling moments. Go for it.
Absolutely. You know, when we talk about Black history in pro wrestling, it just kind of reminds me, for one, that I don't know that the current wrestling fan understands how significant the African-American presentation in pro wrestling is today. You know, the idea that you can look in any promotion and see not just one Black wrestler, but a myriad of African-American wrestlers that represent likely what you look like, how you behave, the kind of lifestyle you lead. That wasn't always the case. And so usually when we start talking about, you know, the first Black wrestling champion, you know, we always think about the first pro wrestling world champion being, of course, Ron Simmons. But before there was Ron Simmons, there were a few other moves that were really, really big. So we go back to November of 1983. It scares me to think that this happened 40 years ago now. 40 years ago in November, that the WWE crowned their first African-American tag team champions, that being Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas. Now, this team was collectively known as the Soul Patrol, and which I think is an interesting name, but we won't spend a lot of time there. But what's interesting about this team is they both were accomplished singles wrestlers. You know, so today we look at, you know, when they throw teams together, as we would say, you know, teams like Randy Orton and Riddle and things like that. That's kind of how this team happened, because Tony Atlas was known as Mr. USA, had a really successful career in the NWA and in WWE prior to this. Rocky Johnson was a great singles wrestler who spent a lot of time, you know, in mid-card fighting for the Intercontinental Championship, but never quite winning it. So when these two came together to win the tag team championships, they defeated the Wild Samoans, Atha and Sika, who are really the progenitors, dare I say, of the Anoa'i dynasty that we now have, the head of the table and the bloodline. It all started with the Wild Samoans. And so they were by far the biggest team of that era, certainly in WWE. So for Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas to get the opportunity to fight them and defeat them was major. They were also, the Samoans were managed by Captain Lou Albano. Now, people may not understand that name, but he was at that point known as the manager of champions. He had managed 16 or 17 different tag teams to the world tag team titles. And so it was kind of like these days, if you have Paul Heyman, you're considered that guy. If you had Captain Lou back in the 70s and 80s, you were considered top tier, and that's kind of why he ended up being a part of helping us get to the road to creating the very first WrestleMania, being involved with Cyndi Lauper and so many others. So shout out there to Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas, without whom we would never have the New Day, the Street Profits, and all of the other black tag teams who have the opportunity to hold the tag titles. And we don't think twice about it these days. We're just like, oh, they're a great team. But that happening in 1983, which still isn't all that long ago, folks, was a very, very big deal. Now then, let's move to the first African-American singles champion in WWE. Again, most people kind of look at The Rock. But before there was The Rock, there was 1995-96, a guy named Ahmed Johnson, who was the Intercontinental Champion, the first African-American to hold a singles title in WWE. And again, to think that that actually happened in 1996 is a scary thought. We went 13 years in the WWE without an African-American holding a championship. Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas only held that title for 3 weeks, guys. It wasn't like they had a 6-month reign or anything like that. 3 weeks, they didn't have a successful title defense, and they lost it back to the Wild Samoans. We went 13 years without an African-American holding that title. So Ahmed Johnson beats Goldust for the Intercontinental Championship at King of the Ring, by the way, which this is when King of the Ring was a pay-per-view and a really big deal. Many thought that Ahmed Johnson was going to end up in the main event picture because he was red hot. So hot till they actually had him teaming with Shawn Michaels, who was the world champion there, at a number of pay-per-views. Now, this is a piece that many people don't know. Ahmed Johnson was actually involved in a number one contenders battle royal for the WWE Championship. It was an 11-man battle royal where he was still the Intercontinental Champion, and he won the battle royal. So he was supposed to be the first person to get a world title shot after SummerSlam. That was the SummerSlam where Shawn Michaels defeated Vader to retain the world title. So we were supposed to have Ahmed Johnson, Shawn Michaels, Intercontinental Champion versus WWE Champion for the title. What happened, though, was a legit kidney injury for Ahmed Johnson that cost him that opportunity. He also ended up having to vacate the Intercontinental Championship as well, and he would never end up in a spot that prominent again. Of course, not long after that, The Rock would become Intercontinental Champion. Ahmed Johnson wouldn't spend too much more time in the company. He would end up certainly in a war with the Nation of Domination, oddly enough. Yeah. And we kind of saw the decline of Ahmed Johnson. But without Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas on the tag team side, and without certainly Ahmed Johnson on the singles side, we don't have the explosion of black wrestlers as champions today without their contribution. So just wanted to share that in terms of celebrating Black history, as neither of those entities get talked about that much, but they are certainly very, very significant in the world of wrestling.
For sure, for sure. Mex, actually, you can give me one of your favorite moments when it comes to black champions in the WWE. What's the one that stands out for you over your time as a wrestling fan?
Black champions in the WWE.
Put you on the spot.
Yeah, like the Kofi one is the obvious one to go to, but what I think was more for me on that run was just the amount of respect you could see when it's like his peers knew that this is probably gonna happen.
Yeah,
there was something for me within, I can't remember, it was like a gauntlet match they put the New Day through, and the Usos just like basically stepped aside. And yeah, you lot go through, like, we want to see this as well. And for me, that is almost like the acceptance of, right, we're taking this guy to the throne, sort of thing. Yeah. The Kofi thing was very, very special. I had goosebumps for like a day, like honestly.
Yeah.
But there's just been, I think, just so many good little bits in terms of just even the Jade Cargill stuff. Like you're giving someone a Goldberg-esque run in her, immediate years of becoming a wrestler, and just letting someone be themselves. That acceptance of you come here, be yourself. And obviously WWE was where she started off with the NXT training, and they already wanted to kind of take certain things away from her in terms of what she was doing outside of wrestling and all of that kind of stuff. That acceptance in kind of putting a newbie, a rookie on TV and backing them. Again, not like so much a big moment, but just something that just changes the tide of how we know things to usually be presented. The person has to be ready and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, man. And then I would say I went to Royal Quest when New Japan came here last year, back in the last year. Michael Oku being on that show. That's like one of the first, if not, I think the first black person, to be on the New Japan show in the UK and stuff like that. Like, again, that's just history, and I was just there for it. And yeah, for me, I don't think I don't have any kind of pivotal championship wins as such. It's just other little moments that just kind of show me and evidence like things are happening, things are changing, times are changing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's crazy to think that there are so many moments that we remember that they're not probably celebrated in the wide sphere of wrestling, but then to us to be able to say, oh, the first so and so, or the second so and so, or the first one to hold it for as many days, and all that kind of stuff. Those little things, it's crazy how those little things are just so important to us, and it shows a lot. As Gerard said. The first tag team to win the first black or African American team to win a tag team championship in the WWE, 1983. Like, wrestling's been around since like the 1800s. Like, it took that long. You know what I mean, and stuff like that. It's just crazy. And then for another 13 years, and we get a singles champion. It's crazy to think. But there are quite a lot of moments, even with all the championships that have been won. We talk about Ahmed Johnson, we talk about Kofi, we remember Ron Simmons, but yet we forget that Bobo Brazil, Bearcat Wright, who won championships, and all controversial in terms of whether they were recognized and all the rest of it. But then we still also had Booker T and Mark Henry, who were world champions before Kofi Kingston. So yes, it wasn't the WWE championship, but it was a main championship at the same time. And even some of the moments with those two guys, everyone remembers the pink jacket with Mark Henry and what he did with John Cena. That was phenomenal. I'll never forget that. And there are so many others. We've had Big E who's won the championship, and of course Bobby Lashley. Bobby Lashley being the only African American to hold the WWE championship twice.
Right.
The only African American to defend his championship at WrestleMania as well. And of course, he's won the ECW championship. He's the only person, not just African American, the only person to hold all three major championships in TNA at the same time. That being the X Division, the King of the Mountain, and the World Championship as well. all at the same time. No one else has done that. I think Kurt Angle has won all of them, but he never held them all at the same time. So to think that Bobby Lashley is above Kurt Angle, but yet we're not talking about Bobby Lashley as though he is above Kurt Angle, it's crazy. But keeping on with Bobby Lashley.
So hold on. I have to make a quick correction, and that is Lashley was not the first 2-time WWE champion. That'd go to The Rock.
Ah, yes, my bad.
That would go to The Rock.
My bad.
Who he held it like 8 times.
I'll just jump on using that to jump on. Will Chisholm had a good comment here. The one thing that would always kill me was WWE never called The Rock a black champion until the late 2010s. The Rock always claimed his black side, but WWE didn't.
Very, very true. And I think that's a big, massive reason why I've completely went over my head with The Rock. You know, The Rock, 8-time champion.
Yeah.
That in itself is crazy. 8-time champion, but we never really knew The Rock. We knew him as The Rock in the Nation of Domination.
Right.
But then after that, he wasn't black.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? After that, he was Samoan.
Yeah.
And even when they played like the Black History Month stuff, they never put The Rock on there ever. Yeah. Until probably the last 2 or 3 years.
So, and I don't. Oh, never mind.
Go. Say it.
Because I'm nervous at the thought that would they not do it just to be nervous to say your biggest star was black?
Right.
Like that. I don't know that I want to say that, but it is interesting. It's very, very interesting. And I'll say this: the tough part, and I saw an interview that Lashley, Kofi, and Big E did, just talking about being the black WWE champions of the modern era, and they were saying they're hoping we can get to a space where that's not something that people talk about, that they just see me as WWE champion. And I totally understand that. That's the hard part about wrestling, is people from all spaces have to be able to believe in who you are. And if they can do that, then it works. You know, obviously it worked with The Rock. It worked with, you know, Lashley and Big E and Kofi and now Bianca and those types of folks. But it's just interesting to watch how culture has changed to make it okay for the WWE to say these things. Because again, they've been they've walked that line very carefully. You know, I think about how it really wasn't until like 2 weeks before that WrestleMania with Sasha and Bianca, where it was actually said on commentary that this is going to be the first time that 2 black women main event WrestleMania. I think they're nervous about saying that because they don't really want to get into what that could or couldn't mean. But I think it is important, just like, you know, Eddie Guerrero was celebrated, you know, as the first Latino WWE champion. I think it's important. Representation is really the name of the game here. And it is so important that when people turn on their televisions, they get to see themselves in some way, shape, or form. And for years, many times we didn't, or when we did, we saw a couple of things. We saw that we could never main event a show. We saw, and then it was the subtle things that, you know, I have to remind people, like even on commentary, like they might have said that 30 years ago, but you can't say that now. Like this whole idea of when you ram a black man's head or a Samoan's head into the turnbuckle, that it doesn't phase them because they have hard heads, right?
Savages.
Like, right. Those are the statements that have been made. And it's like anybody else's head, you ram in and, oh, they're losing it. But you rammed it. Keep in mind that the turnbuckle, thanks you, George the Animal Steel, is all made of foam. So how painful is it for anybody, right? But all of a sudden, we as black people are the ones where, oh, our heads are harder. You'll never say that, but you say that. So I think we are finally moving culturally away from that particular space, because they said it about black people, they said it about Samoans. And so in our heads, we automatically think, oh, if they headbutt you, oh man, it's gonna really hurt. Well, if anybody headbutts you, it's gonna hurt. You know what I mean? Like it's not because we have harder or bigger heads. But I think wrestling as a community has had to be careful, because if you really want to see cringeworthy things, go back onto the WWE network and watch some of the things that were said in the 80s and 90s. And if you pull up some of those territories, I remember going back watching an AWA show where they were talking about a guy called Colonel De Beers, who was from South Africa, and they talked about how he supported apartheid. They used those words. And I'm like, oh my God, we're saying this. You know, like it is that kind of thing. You know, when you have people on camera calling us monkeys, like it's those kind. And it's funny because they pick and choose what they've edited out of the history of the WWE network, but those things are very much still there. So all of that, and it sounds like a tangent and a tirade. It's not. It's just to explain why Black history is so important and why the space we're in now, where, you know, the number one woman in the business in both companies is Black. Right. Like that is common now, but a lot of people work to help make that happen, you know, whose names we'll never know. One day we'll talk about who the first Black person was at WrestleMania. And it'll blow some people away because for many years they had the shortest match in WrestleMania history. And it's just kind of like, holy cow, you know, this is what you think of us, you know? So it's really something that we have to acknowledge and appreciate the progression for where we've come. Do we have further to go? Of course, but we've come really so far. That it is something very, very special.
And that's the thing, you know, you mentioned, you know, talking about the two top females in the two companies at the moment. And at one point it was free. Because even in Impact, Tasha Steelz was the main woman. And that was while Bianca and Jade were at the top as well. So, you know, and then, you know, you mentioned Big E, Kofi, and Bobby Lashley, to have 3 WWE champions who are still active at the moment.
Within a 3-year span. It's crazy.
It's crazy. Before Kofi became a champion, there was no one. Obviously, we had The Rock, but that wasn't acknowledged as the Black guy. But at the same time, you know, there was no one else that was really up there that you thought would become a champion. Farouk, maybe at the time, but obviously it never happened. It's mad. Go for it.
I saw a graphic the other day that said that Kofi Kingston has held a title every year he's been in the WWE. Since he started, apart from I think 2014, and in 2014, it's on record that that's when he was actually thinking of stepping away because nothing was really working. They were really using him, and then obviously the New Day was born following that. So yeah, that's an accolade in itself. I just wanted to get on to Backstage Brawl's comment here. He said, hated the fact that The Rock won the WWE Championship 8 times as a Black champion and refused to acknowledge his Black side, considering who his father was. So they catered to him being ambiguous and seldomly using his Samoan side.
That's a very true. That's a very true thing.
You know, oh Lord, I don't want to. Say. What does this happen to me? So this is the thing that people have to understand, and I'm certain, I would imagine this is happening all across the world, but certainly in the United States, people of color, if you are mixed and you have the opportunity to what they say pass, you get access to things that you might not get access to if you acknowledge yourself dominantly as Black. And so I just think that it's very, very challenging. And think about this. Nobody had achieved the level of success as an African-American wrestler as The Rock. Nobody. And so the question then becomes, okay, what doors are you willing or not willing to walk through with this opportunity, with this label? Do you want to go in with that label or not? And, you know, I just, here's the sad part. The sad part is that ever had to even be an option. It is sad that the option at some point had to be presented. Don't present me, or I'm okay with not being presented as the first Black anything, you know, because here's what's scary. If you go back on the WWE network and go to Monday Night Raw, say in 1997 or so, and the clip is floating around where Farouk straight up said to Vince McMahon in the middle of a ring, hey, why don't we have a black WWE champion? Why has there never been someone who's been worthy to hold that title? And what's crazy is the optics in the crowd. You have black and white people booing him. In 2023, Ron Simmons would have been the biggest face in the company.
Right.
Because he'd be at that point standing up to racism. But in 1997, the culture wasn't that way. So, and again, the irony that The Rock, not only does he have a black father and a Samoan mother, but he got his claim to fame as part of the Nation of Domination.
Right.
So it's like, are we forgetting all of a sudden that these guys who literally stood in the ring and said black power, now we're going to ignore this? But unfortunately in America, there are certain opportunities afforded to you if you're like, okay, I'll just walk in and be who I am, and you don't have to say that I'm the black champion, or I'm the black this, or I'm the black that. And that is the real tragedy in all of this.
Yeah. That's the truth. And it's just so crazy to think that he's, The Rock's career has gone through so many different iterations of black Samoan, and then it's just a guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just isn't acknowledged. It's crazy. But we could talk about this for forever, and I really want to, but we can't. But let's move just a little. We're keeping with this black champion in our mind. Of course, as I mentioned before, Bobby Lashley, being as decorated as he is now facing another massive match ahead of him, going against Brock Lesnar for the third time. Now, we saw the two of them have a clash of words on Raw just last night. And Brock Lesnar actually challenged Lashley to a match at Extreme Rules. Elimination Chamber.
Yeah.
Now, is that too early? Are we hoping that something happens and it moves all the way to WrestleMania? What's happening next? What's happening here?
I was gutted when they said this. My heart dropped into my feet, man. I was thinking, what? Like, I'm trying to see that real life. I'm still trying to see it. Like, I wanted maybe they do like a big kind of contract signing at Elimination Chamber. That's what I was hoping I heard. I thought, that's what they said, surely. But it seems like they're signing the match for Elimination Chamber, which, I mean, it's a couple things here. We saw the Hurt Business semi-reform on this episode of Raw as well. So maybe they're getting closer. Bobby did reference, I'll speak to my agents, my lawyers, my managers before I sign this contract. That's another thing. For, I guess, Lesnar fans on the other side of things, it's like, okay, if they have this match here at Elimination Chamber, maybe we do get Lesnar versus Gunther at WrestleMania, which was rumored at one time. Depends what they see as maybe more of a marquee match, or however they want to phase it. It's disappointing. Like, unless like Gerard says, something happens and we roll it over to WrestleMania. And I'm still gonna ask for a Hell in a Cell, or maybe even an MMA match at WrestleMania if they can function and do something like that. But I don't know what this sudden twist in the road was, because it looked like this should have been a WrestleMania program.
Gerard, do you think there's any way that there's going to be like a turn in the road for it to go the way to WrestleMania?
I do. I think there's one of two things that'll happen. I think either, because this is the first time that Lashley has uttered the words lawyer, agent, and manager on WWE TV. Any other time, it's a fight, sign me up. So I think the addition of those three names, whoever those three people could be, if they're one and the same, could advise him to say, hey, wait a minute. Your first match was at Royal Rumble. Your second one was at Crown Jewel, the most watched international pay-per-view of all time. This isn't big enough. WrestleMania is big enough. So I'm hoping that that's going to be the thing that happens that, incenses Lesnar, makes him even more mad. Now we've got to have this massive match, and again, it's amazing to me because here it is, Lesnar's about the payday. Everybody knows the payday is going to be bigger at Mania than the Elimination Chamber. So why, and then think about this. This would be the single smallest crowd those two men have fought in front of. Just think about that. It was a spectacle at Royal Rumble where they had like 45,000 people. Then they had like 50,000 people at Crown Jewel. So now we're going to fight in front of 15,000? When I could fight in front of 100,000 a month later?
Yeah, it's going backwards.
Yeah. So I think the lawyer piece, that whole thing, they're going to advise him, hey, and just for a little fun history, MVP, of course, had negotiated back in, when he first came in, the largest contract in SmackDown history because of his agent. So does MVP have the same agent that he shares with Bobby Lesnar or Bobby Lashley to say, hey, you know what? Get this money, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's that. The other thing that could happen is if somehow they decide to have the match ends up being a no contest.
Right.
And then if it's a no contest, we have to do it again at Mania. I just don't think they give up this big of a match without something happening at Mania between these two.
I'm thinking the same thing. I'm thinking now that they've mentioned the whole Elimination Chamber already, that's more or less what it's going to steer to is the no contest and then the final deciders at Mania. I'm hoping, and I was kind of hoping it would happen when Lashley came out, that he would say himself, like, Elimination Chamber, are you for real? Like, what are you scared of? Almost, you know what I mean? The fact that he was doing this whole, I've got one up on you as well, I'm calling the shots, all that kind of stuff. He's come out in a suit while Lesnar's wearing his $5 denim jacket. You know what I mean? So it kind of feels almost like Lashley's going to be the one to turn around and say, right, this isn't big enough. We have to do it at Mania and all that kind of stuff. And maybe even tease Lesnar about beating him on the grandest stage of them all and all that kind of stuff. So I'm hoping that's the dialogue that we get. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if it is kind of that, Elimination Chamber, no contest. Let's do it at Mania. There is no way. There is no way. As much as Mex was correct in the possibility of Lesnar versus Gunther, there's no way they're going to pass up a match like this. The decider, all the rest of the built it the way they have. Lashley's got so much over Lesnar at the moment, and not do it at Mania when we're on the road to WrestleMania. Like, it just wouldn't make sense to me. But we'll have to see what happens and how it goes. In terms of the Hurt Business, we had this quiet reuniting of Shelton Benjamin and Cedric back with MVP. The last time we saw the three of them in close proximity, there was this argument, this kind of mess up, and ended up losing the match and whatnot. It didn't look like we were going to get anything from them, or it was going to be something a bit more difficult to get to. We've got it now. Where do we go? Why has it happened like this? Mex, why do you think it's happened like this?
I don't know, and I'm intrigued. At the same time, I think they must be in a way trying to get Bobby back in, because I just fear like there's maybe too many separate things going on here. We have Bobby and Lesnar trying to do what they're doing. We've got MVP approaching Shelton, Cedric Alexander. They kind of come back to winning ways. It's like, are we going to make a move for this or not? Like, it's like Lashley right now is like the prey, and then these guys are like in the grass just waiting to jump, sort of thing. Like, is it gonna happen? Because Bobby seems to be pretty straight on his own thing right now. It's not like MVP tried to come out in this segment and try to help broker the deal or anything like that. Or let me take a look at it. And Lashley's like, no, like, leave me alone, sort of thing. Like, 1 minute they're together trying to forge a relationship, the next minute they're not, and it's kind of just leaving me in a place like where are they gonna do this or not? Like, I'm intrigued to see it, but I'm feeling it's crossing over, if I'm completely honest, for me, just a bit messy at the minute. Maybe it's just not clear in my head and I can't see it, and it's frustrating me. I don't know.
It kind of almost feels as though there was a plan and now they've changed it halfway through, and now they're not sure. or they're doing a thing where they can kind of almost leave it open. It really is just confusing at the minute.
Yeah.
Don't know where it's going. Don't know where it's going at all. The last thing I want to mention as well, real quickly, is obviously we saw the Street Profits in singles action trying to get into the Elimination Chamber. Angelo Dawkins was unfortunately defeated by Damian Priest, while Montez Ford defeated Elias. We saw a little exclusive backstage segment with Montez Ford. Was he teasing him? Was he kind of just happy? What's going on? Where we got Gerard? What do you think's going on with this little thing here?
I for as much as we've been talking about, will they, pull the trigger on a Montez solo career? And a couple of weeks ago, you were saying, hey, what he did in the Royal Rumble was just horrible. Like,
Right.
less than 3 minutes or whatever. To me, putting him inside this elimination chamber says an awful lot. And to me, it looked like Dawkins, who just had this really perturbed look on his face during that whole conversation where he said nothing. I think the seeds are being planted. I think there are. I don't know what's left for, the Street Profits to accomplish. We've been seeing Angelo really stepping it up in the ring a lot more. And he did something weird. I think, was it Monday night where he wrestled with no shirt on? Like, we've not seen that. He usually is a tank top or something.
Monday.
So I'm like, okay, you're trying to
Montez. Oh yeah.
No.
Angelo
Dawkins.
He's been wrestling without a vest for quite a while now.
No, I thought he always had a shirt or something on.
He used to, but ever since he started like losing weight, I guess, and becoming this kind of fast speed wrestler, like
it was super evident to me for some reason Monday night, and maybe to me it's like him showing off, like, hey, I'm doing this work. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So with that said, I think we're in a state now where if they did split them, we actually could see Angelo as a solo competitor doing well. So I think this is the seed, because to me, there's no way Angelo is just cool with, Montez getting this shot and potentially becoming the U.S. champion. Because what if Montez becomes the U.S. champion? We haven't even gotten here yet. He could become the U.S. champion, which you want to talk about making a real issue with Angelo Dawkins. How are you going to team with somebody? They don't have the kind of relationship that the New Day has, which says if one wins, we all win. It's not like that with these two. So I think we're on the road. We're on the road.
I think the seeds have been planted. It's definitely not a thing where it's like set in stone, but they're kind of like, again, doing this whole thing where, we've given you enough to where we can either take it this way or we can take it that way, or we cannot move at all. You know what I mean? So it's going to be very interesting. It's great to see that Montez is in the Elimination Chamber match. He's going to do something
crazy.
He needs to. He needs to do something crazy just to be remembered in some way during that match. I can't see him winning. It'd be a massive surprise if he actually won, with the likes of, you've still got Fury, Seth Rollins, Damian Priest. You've still got the big Australian, what's his name again?
Oh yeah, Bronson Reed.
Bronson Reed.
Yeah.
Come on,
he could win. Like there's enough of a story for either of them to win, I think, at this
point. Anyone in that match could possibly win, to be fair. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens at Elimination Chamber and the weeks or the days leading up to that as well. But listen, guys, this has been our time. We could talk for forever, and I would love to, but we can't. Not that I have a studio manager anymore. I'm in my house.
Right. Get out.
Yes. But guys, this has been WrstlXtra. You've been watching on the WrestleManiac UK YouTube channel. Make sure you click subscribe, like that notification bell, and get to see all the great stuff and great reactions of news and moments from WWE and AEW from this guy over here, Mex, the WrestleManiac. You can find him on Instagram, WrestleManiac.uk, WrestleManiac UK on Twitter. Oh, poor Gareth missed the whole thing. Don't worry, you can still watch us.
There it is.
As soon as we're done, don't worry. As you know.
The replay still works.
Love Gareth.
Yes.
And you can follow this guy below me, Gerard Bonner, the Faction Show, Bonafide, everywhere. Southern Honor Wrestling, WWT Live. and every other place that he decides to turn up in. Guys, this has been our time. You've been watching WrestleXtra, and we'll see you again soon.
See you later, guys.